in a minimum wage, they're part of the contract, and they say that this is what the minimum wage needs to be. So because you sign a contract with the government every time you do anything, because without the government, you don't have any property rights or anything like that. So anything you sign as a contract, you're signing with the state.
If the government is the grand arbiter of what rights are, well then I guess it's totally okay for politicians to be bought out by corporations.
In 2002, more campaign regulation came as the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, or McCain-Feingold Act, restricted corporations or labor organizations from financing issue-based advertising on behalf of candidates. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that the McCain-Feingold Act's ban on corporate and union expenditures was unconstitutional.
Right, Sahil? Right? Oh, wait.
You guys know good old Ben Shapiro, Benny Shap as we know him.
Oh, Benny Shap. I like it. No, seriously, I do, because I don't think you realize of how much swag you're giving to Shapiro when you name him that, Sahil. In all seriousness, though, folks, sorry that it has been a while that I have done an edited response video. Even longer has it been that I have done a kid-friendly edition of a edited response video. And so for my next edited response video, I thought that I would respond to a video by Sahil the Progressive Voice Habibi. I'm sorry, I cannot help but crack just a little when I say the last name, Habibi, where he is making a response video to Ben Shapiro on the minimum wage. Now, primarily we are just going to be defending the position of being against the minimum wage more than we are going to be actually defending Ben Shapiro himself. So we're going to try to put him aside as much as possible and focus on the actual issue at hand. So let's get right into this.
Next time they say something like, I believe in the minimum wage, then you should say, why exactly is it that you want to put a gun to the head of a business owner and force them to pay something? Why is that okay? Why isn't that violative of basic principles of consent? Like you over here, you like gay marriage because you say that two men should be able to wed each other, but those two men shouldn't be able to do business with each other in a mutually agreed relationship? So if instead of them having sex, they were actually just, one was signing a check to the other to paint his car, then you're saying that's not okay? And that you're going to take a gun and put it to the head of one of them in order to make that happen? It's because you're a totalitarian, right? This is the truth. The left is totalitarian. You don't have to feel bad about saying these things.
So in case anybody doesn't know, particularly the younger people who might come and watch this video, the minimum wage is a law imposed by the government that a business, if they're to hire an employee, that this is going to be the bare minimum that they pay that certain employee, unless if, of course, they're hiring somebody to be a waiter or waitress instead, which is lower than the minimum wage for all other employees, whereas waiter and waitresses, most of their income is made up with tips that they get, for example. Which currently, right now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, whereas for servers, that being like waiters, waitresses, and bartenders, is $2.13 an hour.
So when you call the left, especially in the United States, the left is basically center-right in European countries and virtually everywhere else in the industrialized world.
You know, in my experience of debating political spectrums of what is considered left and right, my experience is that it's subjective of what is considered left and right. And honestly, I do not care if, like, the rest of the world is more left-leaning overall than the United States is. Just because that a socialist in the UK is far left doesn't mean that an Obama supporter or a Bernie Sanders supporter is right-wing somehow. I mean, if you are going to seriously imply to me that people who advocate for more economic control, which is what I consider to be more and more left-leaning, by the way, is the more and more that you advocate for economic control, if you're seriously going to imply to me that people who advocate for higher minimum wage, for a heavier welfare system, for more and more regulated healthcare, if not an outright single-payer healthcare system, and advocate for dictating on what benefits businesses should give to their employees. If you are going to seriously try to tell me that that is somehow overall right-wing, makes the American left right-wing, well then, that's ridiculous to me.
Because you're looking at, them having more, a lot, more developed social safety nets, and having every other industrial country has one form of single payer or another. A universal healthcare system, I should say.
And the American left does not advocate for that? I mean, it's becoming more and more obvious that they are becoming more and more advocating of policies like that, like with the rising of Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, and all their followers. But anyway, that's besides the point.
But, what we're looking at here is just some ridiculousness. Now, the comparison between gay marriage and, you know, a minimum wage doesn't make sense. But I wanted to say that even there's actually no contradiction by any means, because when you're talking about two gay people getting married, the state is essentially saying, yeah, this is okay.
Do you seriously hinge your conclusions of what's okay or not off of what the government says is okay or not, Sahil?
So they're signing off on it as part of the contract. In the minimum wage, they're part of the contract, and they say that this is what the minimum wage needs to be. So because you sign a contract with the government every time you do anything, because without the government, you don't have any property rights or anything like that. So anything you sign as a contract, you're signing with the state.
I already addressed this at the bare beginning of my video, but let me address this again, and let me rewind back to the gay marriage question. What I assumed to be originally the reason for why leftists say that gay marriage should be allowed is because it infringes on nobody's rights for two people to consensually have a homosexual relationship or anything like that. If that is really truly not the case with Sahil, well then I cannot help him on that case. Although maybe he had a slip of the tongue or something like that, and he was just having a fumbling, inarticulate moment, I don't know, but assuming that he really believes his own words right there, well, before the 2015 SCOTUS ruling, gay marriage overall in the United States was not deemed okay by the government. So off of that basis, would somebody in the religious right be in the right by saying gay marriage is not okay because the government says it's not okay? Or let's not just apply this to gay marriage. What about NSA spying? Is it okay for the government to do NSA spying despite whether or not we have a constitution that politicians are supposed to abide by that says that they are not supposed to enact NSA spying? The reason for why practically everybody in the United States is against NSA spying is not because of whether or not some politician in the government or the government as a whole says it's okay or not for us to be doing NSA spying. It's not even because of the US Constitution. It's because of the natural principle and natural right that the US Constitution was designed to protect. That being the right to privacy for every individual. Why we say that the NSA spying is not okay. The same thing applies to the minimum wage. For you to be able to make the argument for why we must have a minimum wage and why it is okay for us to implement a minimum wage, you have to make the moral reasoning and moral argument as to why businesses do not have a right to determine what their wage is going to be for their employees, rather than an appeal to government as to why it is okay or not to implement a minimum wage law.
You're signing with the state. And so when you do that marriage, you do that too. They're signing it off. They're saying, yeah, okay, you can get married. I don't understand that. What do you mean? Like, what do you say? Where's the contradiction there?
The contradiction that Ben is trying to point out is based off of the contradiction of moral and natural principles, not off of what the government says is okay or not.
But this hyperbole of, oh, they're putting a gun to your head, does anyone really believe this? Like, are you serious right now? Not even libertarians, because libertarians use this the most. Not even libertarians say that because it's just so stupid.
Wrong. Libertarians do basically use that argument.
They say throw you in jail.
It may ultimately be hyperbolic, but what ultimately happens if you refuse to just go along and go to jail? They'll probably at first pull out the taser and the handcuffs, but even if that doesn't work, they'll probably then start pulling out the gun. The ultimate point is that they use physical force if need be, if you keep on refusing to comply.
Are we really supposed to take the guy who's calling the left in the United States, who's essentially neoliberal left, neoliberals, totalitarian?
Definition of totalitarian: of or relating to centralized control by an autocratic leader or hierarchy, of or relating to a political regime based on subordination of the individual to the state and strict control of all aspects of the life and productive capacity of the nation, especially by coercive measures. And applying this definition specifically to the minimum wage, as we are talking about right now, well, it is centralized control when you want an all-encompassing, across-the-board federal minimum wage for everywhere in the United States here. But might not be complete totalitarianism, and Ben Shapiro thus might be using a slightly incorrect definition, but it is definitely a step towards the direction of totalitarianism, and he isn't that far off.
What he's saying about the compulsion, that the same thing applies to taxation. So I'm assuming that he thinks that taxation is theft as well, because, and if so, I mean, we've pretty much lost the realm of reason. Because if you don't believe that the government should collect taxes, you're purely insane and probably not worth even engaging in any sort of real way.
You're only propping up the confidence of ANCAPs with your arrogant cowardice, Sahil. Now, I'm not an ANCAP, and engaging this point would be getting kind of into the weeds of things right here, but we're just going to move on.
He sounds like a 12-year-old in a 20-year-old man's body.
I wanna hear it, progressive voice. Your daddy senpai, Kylie Uncoolinsky, sounds like a freaking 12-year-old trying too hard to sound like an adult.
And here's the thing also I have to ask. Who wants to work for lower than minimum wage? Like, who's gonna come to you and be like, yo, I'm trying to work for you for less than minimum wage? Nobody. What the fuck are you talking about?
You do not speak for the intentions of every single individual in the United States, Sahil. Without the federal minimum wage in place, there is the possibility that workers could compete better in getting a job. They could work at a low wage, say $5 per hour, to help just merely get their foot in the door. Then with months of proving themselves, they could eventually work themselves up to a higher wage. I'm going to link some literature from the Mises Institute to better articulate this down below in the description box. And to alleviate your pessimisms, not even 5% of the United States labor workforce works for or below minimum wage. Most, in fact, already work above the minimum wage. So if the federal minimum wage was abolished tomorrow, well then it's not like, say, in the next few months that people are literally going to get paid only $5 an hour in the masses.
So it's just pure insanity. I'm telling you, whenever you sign a contract, the business owner and the laborer, you sign a contract, you're signing it with the government in every fucking contract you sign.
Doesn't make it right, Sahil.
Because they are what the founding of they're the whole reason why there's any rights in this country whatsoever. Private property rights don't exist, none of that, without the state.
As a minarchist libertarian, I agree with the notion that Sahil is trying to imply there. I agree that if there is to exist a government, that the government's job is to protect the citizens' rights from foreign invaders. Even if granting that without government at all there will be no protection for people's rights, that does not mean in the least bit that the government is the determiner of what people's own natural rights are, dude. And for you to be making this appeal to government on what rights are is just fallacious in this argument right here. And the notion that the government is the grand arbiter of what rights people get and have, which is what Sahil is kind of implying in this whole video right here, if that is true, well then it's not illegitimate for the government to just take away people's rights, be it racial equality, right to life, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right to run and own their own house and family as they well please, and so on and so forth. Well then, it's just not illegitimate for them to do that. And thus you're just opening up the door for tyrannical dictators to do whatever they want, and they would not be illegitimate in doing that because, hey, they're the grand determiners of what rights are. And when it comes to this issue right here, to Sahil, I say, learn how to argue, dude. If you guys like this video, hit that thumbs up button below. If you have some criticisms to me or think there are some areas where I can improve, comment them down below. And if you want to see more
Dark, edgy content like this,
response videos, news shows, hangout streams, well then hit that subscribe button, because I'm your man. Hope to see you all in the next video. See you all later, and God bless.